Yinka, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Mastering You. I'm so glad to have you today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. We've had a brief little chat before the podcast, and it's made me even more excited. What I just decided to do about 45 seconds ago was ask you, I haven't told you this, by the way, haven't told you this, is ask you the question that I normally ask at the end because you inadvertently gave me a great answer. So the name of the podcast is called Mastering You, a personal development podcast for anyone that's new to this podcast. What I always usually do, or have been more recently asking our guests, is what does self-mastery mean to you? Or what does mastering you mean to you? What does those words mean to you?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here, and I love the fact that you've called your podcast Mastering You, because I think mastering you is pretty much the most important activity, focus, and habit that you can develop as a person wanting to improve the state of your life now and to create a legacy for the future. It literally is one of the most
Nice.
important
That's getting
things.
soundbited, Yinka. That's getting soundbited. You're gonna see
No,
it
it
everywhere.
really is.
It's going to be all over social media tomorrow.
I love it.
No, yeah, carry on if you're continuing, but that's great, and obviously you've got a story to go with that, which is why I asked you that question.
Yeah, no, I definitely have, and I will just say that I believe it to be one of the most important things, but it's also one of the most overlooked things. And that's one of the reasons why it's even more important, because there is so much about the life that we live now and the world that we live in that is looking at other people, looking at external, looking at others in terms of, I need to mask that specific skill over there, or I need to be in control of those people over there. But actually, success. And when I talk about success, one of the things I'm really focused on is making sure that the women, because my business focuses on supporting women in business, that they actually define success on their own terms. And that at the bottom of that, that being the very first idea, that success is what you believe it to be. It's what you make it. It's shaped and fashioned specifically for you. Self-mastery and mastering you has to come at the very core of that. I've got like chills talking about it. I'm so excited. But yeah,
that's a great point. Incredible. Yeah, that's a point that I probably haven't made as much as I would like to, is the fact that for me, again, like you said, like one of the things with self-mastery is you have to define that success, and because of the world we're living with, the media and everything and noise, there's no getting away from it. It is so enticing to be, they've got this, or they've done it this way, or to be bought into. If it's in bit, obviously you were talking about business specifically, and that's a great example. One of my mentors, Dax Moy, who we've had on the podcast, he calls it building Frankenstein's monster. You see this guy is running this sort of 7-step funnel and then he plugs on this book that he wrote and he plugs in that, and then he finds this Facebook ad course and he copies that, and then he sees this podcast and then he copies like that, and so you end up with this sort of Frankenstein's monster of nothing is really yours. You're just copying, and copying can be a good catalyst to starting anything. I do believe that. I think if you want to achieve anything in either, I don't know if you agree with this, but if you want to achieve anything in health, weight loss, business, it's not a bad thing to do it. Look at the people that have already done it.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. Success does leave clues, and I think you're right about copying, but I think there's a lot to be said for contextual copying, and a lot of people won't necessarily. You can't reverse engineer something if you don't fully understand it. And therein lies the problem. And I love the idea of Frankenstein's, but it's such a powerful metaphor, because you've got the face of one thing and the arm of something else, and then you've stuck the arm on the wrong bit, and the leg is on the ear, and it looks crazy. And so I think the idea of, first of all, defining, as you said, what success means, but then also understanding that because that is a version of the world and of yourself and of your business or whatever area you're working on that only you can see right now, then ultimately it is going to be that self-mastery, that habit. And this is the other thing that is so close to my heart about habits and consistency. It's about building the habit of being clear about that next step, being clear about what you're going to do, saying what you're going to do, and then actually doing it. Like it's I'd love to make it more complicated than that, but it really isn't. But if you would just do what you said you were going to do, you'd be amazed how far that would get you.
Oh, 100%. Well, I use the self-journal. I don't know if you've heard of self-journal. And, you know, one of the things that the self-journal has is a plan to reality score. So you have to, you basically look at what was the plan that I set myself and what was the reality of that day. Well, it's nearly the end of, well, not nearly, but 3 weeks into January to this, I can admit I haven't hit a single 9 or a 10 out of 10 so far. You know, but the key is I have hit a lot of 7s and 8s because I've planned my day. And I do think if you plan and you're hitting those 7 and 8s, you know, your life's going to be a lot different from doing no planning. And one of the things that's not surprising at all, but makes me giggle, is the days that there are certain things I don't put in my plan, I never do. Right. So like if I don't schedule my workout in, guess what? I'm not doing the workout. It's not happening.
It absolutely won't. And the thing is, it's not just you, it's how we are. We live this we live this fantasy in our minds. You know, this is why the idea, and again, I say this as someone who's absolutely had perfectionist tendencies for a whole long time, but that's why it's so dangerous. Because we literally tell ourselves a fairy story. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have this amazing day. I'm gonna bench press things I've never benched, but I can, in my mind's eye, it's so perfect. And we fall in love with this perfect idea and this potential. But reality is always going to be different from that, which is why it's so important, as I've learned over the years, just to not get caught up in that whole idea. Perfection is literally one of the most dangerous things on the planet. So, and again, it's part of dismantling that has really been a part of my self-mastery journey, because it used to stop me from doing everything.
So you mentioned that, was it 2007, that particular year, things went a bit south?
Yes,
to say the least.
It was, yeah. So I was working in investment banking at the time, and I had found the love of my life, and we were getting married, and it was going to be great. We got married on 07/07/07, because that's how much of a perfectionist I am. But
at 7
also,
o'clock.
Yeah. But no, but that year just turned out to be such a crazy time. Unfortunately, my husband's mother, my future mother-in-law, she passed away just before our wedding, which was just horrific. And then we got married, and then just a few months later, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And then about 2 or 3 weeks later, we found out we were pregnant with our first child. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, it was a whole lot, as I like to call it. But what that meant was decisions had to be made, because in seeing my mum was very young. My grandma was still alive, and there was no kind of history of cancer in our family or anything like that. So, you know, that was absolutely kind of lifestyle stress related. But because she was so young and it was so virulent, she had to go in for really aggressive treatment. And at the time, she ran her own business. And I was seeing her having to leave chemotherapy to go and service client needs. And so I was like, This doesn't work for me. So I took a step out of my banking career at exactly the same time that, it was made abundantly clear that the idea of having a child wasn't exactly my team or my boss's idea of being a good team member. I stepped out of that banking career into her business to support her so she could focus on her health.
And this time was when you sort of started to think a bit more holistically, more about personal development, more about the inner you, that kind of thing?
Yes
or was
and
it
no.
happen before then?
yeah, so the first thing was this idea, like, and it's one of the reasons why, like, I was literally seeing my mum having to choose between what felt like her health and her wealth, or her money and her life. And I was like, this is not, for me, something that I can countenance without trying to intervene and do what I can to help this. So I was minded that if, you know, when businesses are run, you know, my mom is an incredible human. And actually, you know, she kicked cancer's butt. She's been, you know, several years clear of cancer now, I believe. And she went climbing up Mount Kilimanjaro to celebrate 10 years free of cancer. So, you know, I'm so grateful. It's never the wrong decision, ever. It was incredible. But at the time, I kept seeing the same pattern, because she wasn't the only person I saw. She wasn't the only woman I saw who, before her spate of illness, had been everybody else's, you know, source of help, source of support. And I just kept seeing this pattern that when women, you know, when the world needs support, they run to the women in their lives and they drop everything and they, you know, roll up their sleeves and all get involved. But then when women need support, apart from having the other women in their lives, actually the world isn't as supportive of women as women are of the world. And so I was minded that actually that means that running a business, building a career, building a family, all of those things are more challenging. Now, I'm not minded, you know, for the listeners who can't see me, I'm a Black woman. I live in London. So, but I'm not minded that just because I, you know, am a woman living in the patriarchy, or I live as an ethnic minority in the UK, I'm not minded that my difference represents a disadvantage to me. It just tells me that my journey has to be different. I have to find different ways to get to where it is I want to go. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's harder. Yeah, it's definitely different to someone who doesn't look like me or isn't, you know, female or what have you. But I'm not going to sit in that disadvantaged narrative and then tell myself I can't have what I want, because that definitely isn't the case.
But it helps to, I guess it's a tricky topic. Like, but I mean, it's something I noticed as a personal trainer. I would say about 10 years ago, or maybe 8 years ago, I used to do a lot of seminars and workshops, and a lot of our sort of, I guess, market would be women, mums mainly. We get a lot more guys now, but a lot of mums. And I was during one workshop one day, it just kind of hit me, because I was just getting the same challenges, the same things come up over and over and over. And I was like, wow, this almost needs a name. This is a real issue. It's almost like we've moved with the times. It's great. Like, you know, the whole empowering women and, you know, their own career. And it's great that we've moved on a lot from the traditional ways. But it seems that there needs to be a shift in thinking as well around it all, because they were just like, you know, as you can imagine it, like let's talk about like a weight loss workshop. So the woman's like, she's working full time, she's got 2 kids, and then she's trying to lose weight, and so she's trying to juggle, you know, doing her job. She's maybe a career person as well, and then she's trying to sort out her diet. She's trying to make everyone happy. Probably cooking for her husband as well, cooking for herself, doing the washing, doing the cleaning, like the housekeep. And I used to do a lot of coaching as well, and this whole story kept coming up, and I realized myself, you know, the society does need to massively shift its ways to move forward.
One of the things that I found, though, and again, this comes back to this idea of self-mastery, is about focusing on what works, not what's convenient, not what you've been told. So as someone I've been on my own weight loss journey, I've lost over 100 pounds.
Wow, amazing. So well done, Yinka.
Yeah, thank you. But the number one thing that completely transformed my weight loss journey was honesty. You know, I lost 45 pounds before I ever started the exercise bit. you know, and you know, I know that's unpopular for the PTs in the world who are like,
no, listen, we are running an event next week, me and my mindset coach, called the Weight Loss Mindset, little plug. And it's the course, like the webinar and the event, we won't be talking about anything to do with nutrition and food. It's all going to be around mindset.
Absolutely.
Because that is the rule, that's the ruling thing. It's the thing that leads with the actions, behaviors.
Absolutely. So your relationship with food, your understanding of, as I said, what works rather than what is convenient or sexy, or and also things like habits. You know, one of my favorite sayings is, first you make your habits, then your habits make you. And they were the things that for me, I noticed, and I understand I'm not the only one, I noticed that I never made a brilliant food decision after 8 o'clock at night. Everything was sweet and cushy and yummy and disgusting for my ongoing health. So it, you know, when people say, oh, don't eat late at night, do whatever you like, but be honest. And I know, I knew then that I was never making a good food decision. So I made the decision that losing weight, and the reasons that I wanted to lose weight at the time, I just had my third child then. I, you know, wanted a different life. I wanted to be a different type of parent. I didn't want to be out of breath. I didn't want to be miserable in my own skin. Those reasons were more important than however good a donut was going to taste. And so I needed to, they call it future cost. So to take some of the pain of that donut in the future and bring it into today, and just decide not to have anything. And that's the thing, because I was like, oh, well, you know, maybe I'll have one. No, you won't. You'll have them all. Maybe. And I was just like, no, like, rather than, like, also the whole thing about decision fatigue, rather than making a rubbish decision at 8 o'clock at night, I would just make a good decision at 8 o'clock in the morning and just decide to cut the food off altogether.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, it all rolls round back to the through line in our podcast is self-awareness. It's all comes back to another quote from Dax is, know yourself to grow yourself. Like understanding, like you said, if you know that if you eat after 8, it has a bad effect, or some people it's bad sleep, some people it's drinking alcohol, whatever that thing is that is the catalyst. Absolutely.
And actually it was John Maxwell, that to know thyself, grow thyself quote. He talks about as you said, this whole idea of mastery, but also of acceptance and of growth. Like the opportunity, like there's such, life is beautiful, like and it's even more beautiful when you decide to show up and be your best self, and you can't do that living in a barrel full of lies, which is ultimately what we're doing when we're not in that self-mastery space, when we can't spend time with ourselves, we don't want to really understand what triggers us and why, and so we use any and everything we possibly can, and that could be anything from food, from relationships, sex, running after money, it's anything that stops us from just being able to take a minute and see what's true and sit with that. And actually, when you are able to really take that time to be with yourself, sit with yourself, and see and be honest in that space, don't get me wrong, it's the toughest thing in the moment, but it is game changing when you do it.
Cool. So just moving slightly, like pivoting slightly. So to women, any women listening right now, maybe they're in sort of a corporate career like yourself when you were in banking, or maybe they just started their own business, but they're trying to juggle all of these things that we've just talked about, juggling kids, juggling family, got a lot of stresses. What's your message to them? Where do they even start to think about all this? Like for you, I guess, when you started your own personal development journey and learning this stuff, what did you find most valuable to start with?
Okay. So what I found when I started my journey was so much of the information and advice out there was designed by men for men, and really focused on this idea of having lots of time and having lots of space, like mental space and time space, to 10x things and hustle and grind and all of that fun. And then I found that didn't work.
Can I interrupt you there, actually? Because even I've even noticed, I agree with you, by the way, and I've even noticed this since I've become a dad, like a dad of two. Like a lot of the information is almost assumes you haven't got kids as well. You know, I've had mentors that don't have kids, and the things that they expect you to do, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like,
right.
even if I had time, like I wouldn't be choosing to do that than spend time with my children.
Absolutely.
And so like you're doing a different world.
They assume, no, you're right. They assume either you don't have kids or your kids are of a different age. And one of the things I found early on in my journey was that rather they would, you know, promote their beautiful, fantastical formula program in a, you know, snazzy number ending in 9 or 7. But what they weren't explaining was the underpinning that they would have, and what I like to call the wife at home effect, who was making all this space for them to go out and do whatever it is that they were doing and promoting to us. So what was getting them the results wasn't just their magic formula, it was the underpinning that this other entire human was creating for them, doing the laundry, organizing the kids, doing all of that stuff to give them that space. Now, as I said before, I am the wife at home, and I love being the wife at home. I love being a mum to 3 little ones, and I say little, and I laugh because my eldest is about to be taller than me, and I'm 6 foot, so he's a very tall boy.
Wow.
But what I will say is that our lives are different. Our lives are different. We get to decide what that means and what that looks like in terms of success. But what I found and where whatever it is that you are trying to achieve, it's to remember that you are what you do habitually, not what you do occasionally. And so this idea of first we make our habits, then our habits make us, is kind of the number one thing that I center and support women to focus on, because ultimately, you know, a little by little, a little becomes a whole lot. If you get 1% better every day, that's 37 times better at the end of any given year. And so it's really just supporting women to understand that it's better to start tiny and be consistent than to take this massive leap and then to drop off at the end. And so that's where you start is looking at your habits.
Yeah, because there is this, you know, and it's completely understandable, I think, for a lot of women, is that this kind of guilt factor, isn't there? You know, I want to spend time, I've got this project, or I've started my business, or maybe it's a new career move, but I feel guilty because, I mean, my own wife went through this, you know, just recently. So since we had kids, she went down to 3 days a week. She even worked within the business for a few years. So she had lots of time with our first child. She's gone back to her own sort of corporate career. She's quite ambitious herself. And then this year, with both kids going back to school, decided to go back to full-time work. And, you know, but previously she spent like 5-6 years being used to sort of having a bit more time with the kids, and found that quite tough to start with. Like, you know, I feel like I should spend more time, you know, and I think that's a real common one, particularly more so for females than men, because obviously, you know, the guys generally haven't been at that point where they've spent so much time with it, they're noticing any difference.
Yeah, and there's also that social expectation of what a good mum looks like, or what a good wife should be doing. And the fact is that life and society should all over a woman's party all the time. And therein lies the challenge, but also the opportunity. Because if you get the opportunity to define for yourself, you know, what a good mum looks like, what a good wife looks like. I remember reading, I believe it is in Glennon Doyle's Untamed, where she said that being a good mother, one day she realized that being a good mother was about being a disobedient daughter. Now, as a Nigerian kid, that blew my mind. Like, literally blew my mind. But she was absolutely right, that she would have to disobey and upset her parents in order to protect her children in that particular instance. And so it really is about that redefining for yourself what, you know, success means, what, and I say that in the context of, you know, in terms of things like time and success measures, but also it is to recognize again about being honest, and that honesty piece, and coming back to that self-mastery focus, that honesty piece is the toughest work. But for example, if you're a woman running a business, you need to be very clear that if your business isn't making money, then you are stymieing and suffocating its success. Now, you can tell yourself there are 101 great reasons for that, and I'm never going to be here to tell you that there aren't. But at the same time, a successful business should be working for you, not just the other way around. And so it's really, again, comes back to that honesty and that having a grown-up look at what's going on, and then making a decision to do things differently to get what you want.
Awesome. So going into you, how did you make that transition? How did you decide, or how did you get started from your safety net of a job in the corporate world to going out on your own and actually doing this in practice?
So having joined my mum's business and learning about business, finding that all this information was made by men for men, inadvertently or deliberately, and then constantly seeing women, like supporting my mum's business, and then other women coming to me saying, oh, could you help me do this, help me do that? At the time, you know, I was juggling all the tiny humans. So I was like trying to wrangle all that, but I just kept, as I said, kept seeing women struggle. And that irritated me. Like, it irritated me. And I really felt that the message, particularly in the industries that I'm in, you know, business development, personal development, coaching, consulting, strategy, was sending messages to women that you are not enough. You're not doing it right. You are the problem. And I as I'm a scientist and a mathematician at heart, and you know, I did an economics degree, and I was like, the data is not telling us this. If all of the women are the problem, then maybe it's not the women that are the problem, maybe it's the data information. And so I began to really think about and gain a better understanding of some of the adaptations that were needed to support women to succeed in business. And as I said, it comes down much more to small, tiny actions consistently, as opposed to 10x big giant occasional actions. And to be honest, that's a success habit, full stop.
Small micro little actions.
Absolutely.
That's one of the keys. What are some of the small micro actions you know someone can take to kind of get started if they want to change career, or they want to start their own business for a mum?
So one of the when you look at what are called high performance habits, and this is a book by a guy called Brendan Burchard. He talked about there are basically 6 habits that every high performer takes, and it's none of the habits that you think people take. So everyone talks about waking up at 5 o'clock. Wake up whenever you like. Like, it really, I do wake up early, but that's because I need to be me before I become someone's mom and wife and all these other hats, yada yada. But so, for example, one of the first habits is clarity. You getting clear on why the hell you want to do this, what impact you want to make, what difference you want to create in the world, all the way back down to clarity on what are you doing today. So clarity seeking is one of the biggest and most important habits. So for a woman, for example, who's thinking about leaving her role, understanding why, getting clear on that why. The fact is that you are the common factor in all of your spaces. So please don't think you're running from someone in a job when part of what you're running from is going to come with you in you. And so that clarity is game changing. Another one of those habits, and I won't spoil the whole book for your listeners, they can go grab that book. It's amazing. But another one is about kind of energy management and intention. So setting your intention. What are you what are you here to do? What are you here to bring? How are you showing up? And again, setting that focus. And like you said earlier, for so many, people are just knocking around. They're not really, they don't really have a plan at all. They're just like, oh, like rolling into the day and rolling around in life in general. I've got no qualms with that, but the result.
I think there's a time and place. Like, I think there are some times when it's nice to have that, and it's, you know, I mean, I think that, you know, it's nice to have that freedom of just whatever, like, you know. But then, you know, if you have goals, if you do the work, like you say, if you have the clarity of what's your purpose, what's your impact, then, you know, you should have a bit of a plan. There should be things that you want to achieve, and then you need to be putting that stuff down.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I genuinely believe, like you said, there is a time and place for it, but it's about really understanding what is needed when, and that's really important. So and then the next one, and these, so seeking clarity, that kind of generating energy. The last one on the personal side, and then there are 3 habits on the social side as well, is about raising necessity. So what is urgent? What needs to get done? What is important? And that's the thing, because one of my favorite quotes, I love quotes. I'm a I'm a church kid, so like pastors always talk in quotes and Bible verses, and that's how I remember stuff. But one of my favorite quotes is, we don't do what we want, we do what we must. Like, you breathe because you must breathe. You eat because you must eat.
That's a really good. That's so. I like that as well.
You honestly don't. The minute that you turn something into something that has to get done, it gets done. You literally don't negotiate on it. And the reason you know this, you will know as a parent to young kids, and, you know, myself as someone who has 3 children, I love my sleep but when they were little, they could be in the other room, I could be deep in the best dream of my life, and they would whimper and I'd wake up. And I'd run and I'd go running. And so, because in me, that became a necessity, that was important. And so really identifying what is important, and that's in, so again, for someone who's thinking about making the transition, what is important today. You know, I really, you know, I love talking to women all the time, and they're like, oh, I want to start a business. I'm about to, you know, sort out a website. I'm like, you don't need a website to start a business. I still don't have a website. I've been in business for years. I don't have a website at the moment. I will have soon. But the thing is, the revenue that my business has brought in, everybody will tell you it should be impossible to create that level of revenue without a website. I didn't do it on purpose. I just did it because I was focused on what was a necessity. And women were coming to me saying, please help me, please keep me accountable, please help me to implement and to make a difference. I just haven't got around to doing the website, but it tells you that isn't important. What is important is the impact you want to make. So, you know, for example, I spend time on my socials, you know, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, getting my message out there. That is important.
That also comes back to, like, and this having the self-awareness around yourself, what your skill set is. You know, for someone, let's say you're a geek, or you're a marketing geek, or you may be a website and running ads and doing that is going to work better for you. But, you know, if you're quite social and you're quite good at bringing up conversations and networking, and, you know,
ironically I'm not, because ironically I'm introverted, but what I was taught by one of my mentors is what does a business need? So what does a business need to generate awareness, to generate interest in what you have to offer, to create desire for the products you're offering, and to ask people to take action. Now the question is, can you do that without a website? Yes. Can you do it better with a website? For sure. Some people can, for sure. Is a website an absolute necessity to do that successfully? No. And so I know, don't get me wrong, and some of my best friends are web developers, and they're all like, please let us do your website. It's going to be amazing. I absolutely will have a website. Please get yourself a website, but don't fool yourself into believing that that's going to be the thing that makes the difference to your business, because it may not. The point is about being honest about what your business actually needs, and when it needs it, and it isn't always a website.
Yeah, I think with the website, and people buy loads of business cards and leaflets, and
Vistaprint loves you.
and they sort of fool themselves into thinking getting between busy and effective, and and like you say, I mean, I have a website, but I mean, it's not what we use to build the business.
Don't get me wrong, I will get a website. I absolutely will.
I won't hold it against you if you don't.
All I'm saying is that what is needed, as opposed to, and this is what you talked about, it's about what works rather than the things we've been sold as needing. And it's what I've discovered on this journey, and again, this comes back to that self-mastery piece, is so much of what we've been told is a crock. So much of what we've been told has been to benefit someone trying to sell you something. That the message of you being incomplete or broken or problematic is so someone can sell you something to complete you or to fix you. But what happens if you're not broken? What happens if the benefit of telling you you're broken is just to sell you stuff? What happens if the only person that you're waiting for to solve whatever the problem you think you have is you? Then all of a sudden, like, it's game on. It's a completely different way to roll in the world. And that's something that really excites me.
I think a lot of time, a lot of things that have been sold to us try and complicate the issue, don't they? Try and make it sound like it's more complicated than it maybe is.
For sure.
At the end of the day, I mean, even with what we do at LPT, very much a lot of it is just nailing the foundations. Are you hydrating? Are you getting good sleep? Are you moving more?
Are you breathing?
Are you breathing?
Sleeping and water are the 3 biggest keys to weight loss. That was what I discovered. For all of the time and all of the information and everything I learned about exercise, about nutrition, and sleeping, breathing, and water. They are the things that on my 100 pound weight loss journey have been the biggest difference.
So this has been really awesome. Really enjoyed this conversation, Yinka. I mean, so for anyone that likes, particularly any ladies that really like the idea of getting some help and some advice and support, what does it look like, in terms of the steps that you take that person through and get them to make progress?
So I work both on the business side and also on the personal side. So on the personal side, I have coaching opportunities, and again, it's built around a self-awareness habit. So in addition to kind of sessions and us building a real sense of direction and where it is you want to go, I'm also supporting around kind of daily reflection prompts for you to really take that time to get to know you, to be able to know yourself in order to grow yourself. On the business side, it's even more fun, and I have programs as well as kind of strategic support where we basically set a goal and then you are kept accountable around some of the never sexy but always impactful basics of being clear on your next step, declaring what that is, and then moving powerfully and intentionally towards that next step as you build out your goals over we do that in 90-day increments. So ladies often join for 190 days and then they stick around and stick around for a little while. So
with some of your programs, what are some of the most and the steps within the programs, what are some of the most what are some of the steps that your ladies find the most challenging?
It is about letting go of what you think you should be doing versus actually getting on. So, for example, I say things like clarity seeking is one of the most important things. So if they're sitting down to do a piece of work, before they, I'm like, at the start of every session, you sit down, be clear about how long you've got and what you are expecting for the outcome for the time you're sitting down for. And they're like, oh my gosh, if I've only got an hour, you're asking me to spend, five whole minutes, like, to plan it. And I'm like, yeah, because actually, if you spend that 5 minutes planning, what you'll get done in the rest 55 minutes is more than you spending 2 hours and just faffing around in that time slot.
How long do you typically find, let's say you've got a lady, she comes to you, she never gives any time to herself. It's always to her kids, her family, or maybe her colleagues. How long do you find it takes for them to start building the habits, the self-awareness, the confidence to start putting themselves first?
Oh, it's quick and it's early because it's what we work on first. So even on the business side, like the very first action in the welcome letter, I make them, choose their favorite color and then put time blocks in their calendar, non-negotiable time blocks for their most important client, which is them. So it's the first thing we do is to get them that me time. And I'm like, this is not, oh, I'm going to learn something, I'm going to train. I'm like, go out, get a massage, go for a walk, go get lost do whatever it is that fills your soul. But that has to be, you are an amazing business person. You would never shirk on a responsibility for your external clients. So you're not going to shirk on the responsibility for your most important client, which is you. So it's something we work on. And I mean, they see, their minds are often boggled how it is that they're spending less time working, but they're getting more impact, they're getting more results. Women have come along and they've had the biggest months in their businesses, like really quickly. But again, the 80-20 rule is not a rule I made up. It's the name of the game. It's finding those 20% actions that get you 80% of your results, and that's what we really focus on.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest limiting beliefs or poor beliefs, is this idea that more is better. And I mean, you mentioned like managing your energy earlier, and when sometimes I get a client that sort of said, well, I haven't got any time to do anything like drink water or get my steps in, because I'm like, you not got 10 minutes, you not got 50. No, I have to be on the computer. I'm like, what, for 8 hours a day? And I'll call them out on it, because I don't know anyone. I mean, if anyone works for 45 minutes, pure focus time, you're doing well. If you're non-stop creative, getting stuff done, 60 minutes, it could be done. 2 hours, 3 hours, no,
you're lying to yourself.
Not a chance. You are kidding yourself.
You're lying to yourself, if not killing yourself. But that's the thing. You're scrolling on Facebook. You're getting distracted. Your mind's wandered. It is much better to take 5 minutes at the top of the hour, work for full. I think they said 42 to 53 or something is mental optimum. Then get up, walk off, and then come back and start the next hour.
Yeah, I mean, I've got good concentration, but I use a Pomodoro. I use this. We've had him on the podcast, a guy that creates some music, and he does it in timing with Pomodoro. So you listen to the music and then he gives you the break. And even that, it's 25 minutes, but even that is like, oh, I can have a 5-minute break now. And that works well, but give yourself, if you're listening to this and you're kidding yourself that you think that you can't have 5 minutes, you'll get paid back in productivity by having more than 5 minutes, you
absolutely will.
That's huge. So I really enjoyed this. Yinka, any last tips or any messages that you want to share? Obviously you've shared your sort of process to working with you. Any last tips, particularly for ladies listening?
And actually you asked a really great question in our kind of intro conversation. My message is really that kind of self-belief goes hand in hand with self-mastery. So there's an expression that I use, that everything you need to get everything you want is within you or within reach. I really do believe that. And the minute you stop looking for external answers and external saviors and external fixes, and recognize that you've got this incredible vision for what you want the world to look like, with you having kind of lived your best version of your life, and that you've got everything you need to take that very first step, and any other thing you need along the way will come to you as you start walking. The minute you make the decision to go on that path, everything changes. All of us are just, you are that hero in your life. You are the main character of that film that's called, your best life. It is literally your world. We're just living in it. So I just really encourage every woman to go out there, to believe and know that the things that she wants, she's allowed to want them, and then to just run full force like this is your one wild and precious life to get it, because it really is.
That's awesome. Awesome. Okay. Well, I think that's really inspiring, particularly for the ladies listening. I hope you found that inspiring. What socials, where can people find you on the socials? I know you said that you're quite active on those, Yinka. I mean,
yeah, so LinkedIn is my happy place, but you can connect with me on Facebook, Insta, or Twitter as well.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, we'll put the links in these show notes anyway, and anything else, after that, you can let me know and we can add that too. But thanks so much, Yinka. I've really enjoyed this conversation today. I think it's a really important one, really important topic of conversation, really needed. I think the message that you have is fantastic. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Take care.